Soon is right now. What is going on, all you profitable stylists and all you future profitable stylists out there? We are talking about how to choose the right color for hair extensions, length, texture, and color.
Yeah, it seems like such a softball topic, but it's almost like going back to basics. It's probably the most important things to do to make sure your extensions look right. And we were talking a little bit before we got on here, and it was funny that you went to the same place as I went to for the color, even though it was the third one you said. But the matching of color drives me freaking crazy. And it's not just it's not the matching that drives me crazy, because I can match fine. It's the matching, and then the client comes, because you got to order hair, right? So they're going to come back. They're going to come in a day or two or three or a week. And then the client says, I freshened up my color in the meantime. You what? So now, if you even ordered the right color, which we'll go to in a second, it doesn't match anymore because they freshened it up. Now, if they just did that stupid clear color, it wouldn't be a problem. But when they go and freshen it, who knows what that means? Darker, lighter, or they toned their hair. Well, it's a different freaking color now, and the extensions may not match. So I got to the point where I kept talking so you couldn't defend yourself, but I got to the point where I would say, it's like, okay, so between now and the time that we do your hair, can you hear me fine? I have my hand in front of the mic.
What?
Yeah. From the time, from right now, don't touch your hair. Like, don't cut it, don't color it, because of all the things. But then you brought up one that I've never experienced.
Which one?
Because you're dealing with, you were talking about like dealing with the stylist complaining about color because something changed, but the stylist matches the color, orders the hair, and then they color the client's hair.
And then they color the client's hair fresh that morning before they put the extensions in. I've
never dealt with that level of, I shouldn't say any bad words here, but
I understand the sentiment. Because when we teach class, when we're doing our certification classes, we always say you want to apply hair extensions on freshly washed, colored, prepped hair.
You don't want to color the hair after it's in. I see. Yeah, what you're saying.
But what has changed is you haven't already matched that color to that fresh hair. You have matched that color to what was existing currently at the time when you matched it. You didn't factor in that you're going to be coloring it, and that's going to change the tonal value,
Right. So you're doing a consultation on that day. If you're talking about extensions, you might say, well, let's go ahead and freshen up your color today, tomorrow, the next day, and then we'll match you and order your extensions. And then you should be coming within a few days, and there should not be a need to change the color. So it should just be part of the organization of the consultation to get the color right, pretty close to ordering the hair and then doing the hair and not having to change it. And I get it. Some people say, so I do a highlight every blah, 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 but the extensions will last longer. So there may be a highlight or two done while the extensions are in. That's right. That's right. And so what can you do here? Well, a lot of things. You can do a partial. You can pick in between the extensions and do a little here and there. But most of the time, extensions, like we talked about last week, are not done on top of the head. So you highlight the top of the head, and maybe you just highlight around the hairline to get them by for a time or two before you take all the extensions out, then do their highlights or color, and then put the extensions back in. That's just some real broad, quick answers, but there's a lot of details in there you might want to
help me with this one, because I was doing a Virtue Live training. I was doing an online live training with stylists yesterday.
Virtual, not virtue. You have
I call it Virtue Live. No, that's my little thing that I call
virtue?
It. That's what I call my trainings, are Virtue Lives. Yeah,
Virtual
Live. I just shortened the word virtual
and into a word that you don't have. Virtue. I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
I had to think about that for a second. Oh, that was a good one. Oh, that was a zinger.
Gonna give yourself virtue by naming you a virtue.
That hurts.
Go ahead.
So I'm doing it, and the stylist says, the obvious question of, well, wouldn't it just be easier to put the extensions in and then color everything all at the same time? And I go, yeah, theoretically it would be. It just depends on how much outgrowth the client has. Because why? What's that matter? I says, well, generally speaking, depends how close you get to the scalp, and it depends how much outgrowth the client has. If the client has enough outgrowth and you attach it to that outgrowth area and then you go color everything fresh, when you go to remove the extensions and push them back up again, or if you're doing K-tips and you take, they grow out 6 months later, and then you take them out and you're going to go to put new fresh set in, you're going to have a checkerboard going across the client's head. This stylist start laughing at me so hard. She goes, what the hell's a checkerboard? I'm like, I don't know. I think technically speaking, it would be considered block coloring. Would that be accurate to say?
Maybe.
But you know what I'm talking about, right? Like the attachment areas would still have the original outgrowth, non-colored.
Because you've covered it with an attachment that should, if the attachment is well done, should be squeezing out any potential colorization, right? There should be not lightening or darkening. And so then when you take the extension out, you got a void or what looks like a misspot. Let's go a step further. The reason why I don't like to do that, to even get to that challenge, is I don't think a lot of people think about hair itself. We take this hair. What color was it when it came from the donor? What color was this? Pretty close to this color, actually. But maybe you're not using that color. Maybe you're using a much lighter color. So to me, it's almost like, it's like this. Can I just use the same color formula on two different people? Why not? Because even if it's the same color formula and they look like they're the same color, they might come out two different colors. Why? Because one might have started off lighter or darker than the other. One might have a different pigmentation, maybe more driven in there because they've been box coloring their own hair for a while. The other one's been going to a salon. There's just so many variations in these two different people and their lifestyles and how their hair got colored. That's exactly what's going on with extensions. The extensions themselves started off one color, got bleached up to a particular tone, and then were colored to match a particular color. I
agree.
So your color, it's like coloring two different people. So you can't just put color on extensions and a person's head and expect them both to turn the same color, lighter or darker, especially if you're going lighter. I don't
think people realize that hair extensions are not this magical unicorn thing. They also have their own individual texture, density, and porosity. In addition to everything else you've said, they still also retain their own version and variables of texture, density, and porosity. So yes, it is completed at the factory and set up for manufacture. And then now that I say that out loud, that just reminds me as well too, the completion from the factory into packaging, that dye load is a textile dye. That's not even a regular dye. So that's a whole nother variable in addition to everything you've said and everything I've said too. There is so many things going on. There is no way in this God's green earth you're ever going to get it perfect. And that's the worst. That's the kiss of death. I'm a perfectionist. Not when it comes to hair extensions. You do not want to be. We should do a whole thing on why you shouldn't be a perfectionist for hair extensions.
Let me blow your mind just a little bit being a colorist. I think you're going to enjoy this. I just came back from a hair replacement conference, and I don't even know the answer to this. So I'm going to be a little vulnerable here for a second. Okay. Because hair replacement hair systems are colored with textile dyes also, and extensions are. Some of the attendees were saying, where can we get textile dyes? Should we be using that to refreshen color? I thought, oh, interesting. I don't know. We're kind of looking into that now. But one of the ladies says, well, I have a confession to make. Let me tell you what I do to freshen color on systems I've been doing for a long time. RIT dye, the dye that people use for clothing. And I said, is that a textile dye? I mean, we do use it for textiles. Is it a stain? Is it a deposit only style color? Now I want to dive down this rabbit hole of what is RIT dye and how would it affect hair? Is it just a stain? Is it just a deposit only? So she mixes in her own little bottles, like her own little chemist. Because I said, wait, if you put that in some water in a tub, can you just this wouldn't be the most sanitary thing to do, but it was just a mental, like trying to understand the
Yeah,
length
sure,
of processing. Could I dip multiple hair systems in the same one throughout the day, or does it have an oxidation, or does it time out? And she was like, so I do use the same bottle over and over. And I didn't understand it at first until somebody explained it to me later. But what she meant is she takes a bottle of water and she puts 1 or 2 or 3 drops of a particular color.
Yeah.
Right. And then, so she's not using the same stuff over and over. She just means her mixture, and she knows what color this performs. And this is what she does. She puts that bottle in a microwave for a bit, warms it up, because that is the heat that's helping open the cuticle layer, I guess, and getting it to activate. I don't know if it's activating the actual color or if it's helping activate the hair by opening the cuticle or pores. And so I thought, well, that, I've been on this color knowledge search recently with the color training. So now everything about color is interesting to me.
It's fascinating, right?
Yeah. So now I'm like, all right, I get a little bit of normal color systems and deposit only color systems. Now I'm going into coloring clothing. How is that color different? Is it just a stain? We're not going to go into great detail here, but that you brought it up. Hair extensions is not colored with the same type of color we color hair with. So it's not going to perform the same. That's why you've got to treat them separately. And with the on-stage hair, sorry to keep going here, that's why we provided the B series. We have 7 colors that have a B in front of them, which just means it's been bleached up. I know the world of stylists in America, we don't like to use the word bleach as much as lighten or lift, but bleached up to certain tones, 6 or 7 tones. And then we're leaving it to the stylists to then color darker or tone the color they want. Those are the best and easiest ones to actual color because they've been bleached up and they have not had any textile dyes put on them yet.
And there's the B series from On Stage, and then there's also the NC, which is non-chemical treated, no color on there as well, too. And you can completely customize that one. The TLDR of it is this.
Here's the B series right here. I just happen to have that coloring. This is 6 of the 7. So we've got these colors bleached up and not toned. So you can pick any one of these and then use it just like it is, or color it if you want. And then there's one over on this other end.
There's the NC over there for you.
And then that's the NC, no chemicals at all. That's a mixture of a few different, a few different browns because it's coming from multiple donors, but most of the donors are dark-headed. So it just tends to be darker hair. So those that I just showed you are made from the ones that Eddie just showed you. That was really kind of cool how we did that from 2 different states, right? I did. But it seems like we're in the same.
High
five. So what were you going to say?
Not to get, just to keep it at a very surface explanation, not to get very deep into it, because that's a whole class in of itself.
Right.
With hair color, if you have to mix it with an activator or some kind of a developer, then that becomes a permanent or a demi-permanent. Okay. Meaning it is going to try to deposit deep into the hair shaft.
Right.
If you're only using color straight by itself,
right from the bottle or the tube,
straight from the bottle or the tube, think primarily like behind the chair. What we do a lot is fantasy colors. Your purples, blues, red, greens, orange, all your fantasies. Those are considered semi-permanent color because you do not need an activator. It goes straight on, and rather than trying to penetrate into the hair shaft, it just sits on the top, a surface. Then there are stains and dyes and rinses. They are still technically semi-permanent, okay? By mixing it into distilled water, you're just allowing the concentration of the pigment. That's why she's only putting in a couple of drops of that red dye, because it's so heavy. The molecular structure of that dye is so heavy that putting it into the water, just helps allow it to dilute and dissipate. And then it makes it spread a lot more easier across the hair shaft as well. Heating it up is a very creative and a very advanced thing that stylist in particular that you mentioned is doing. It's not something I would openly recommend to anybody and everybody. you must do your homework first and understand how chemistry works. Because anytime you heat up a dye of any kind, you are creating a chemical reaction, which is throwing in another set of variables altogether. And especially using a microwave, now you are not just heating up naturally. Microwaves use infrared vibrations. You know, it's like rays. It's microwave rays, radiation rays. So you are really messing up the molecular structure of that molecule. So you got to be even more careful, more practice, more trained on what you're doing with that. But with that said, like you were talking about, if you took like a Tupperware and just filled it up and then threw the hair system in there, what's going to happen is the color from the system is going to contaminate that little tub of, that little bath of dye that you've just mixed. Mm-hmm. If you take that out, or if you leave that in and throw a second piece in there, system in there, hair extension in there, it's going to cross-contaminate both systems. You don't know what's like, you cannot sanitize a hair system so perfectly and remove all the free radicals off of there before you put it in there. That's why she was mentioning that she uses one bottle. She just refreshes that one bottle and is applying it to each individual system. RIT dyes are a form of textile dyes. They're not as potent as a textile dye. It would be the equivalent of us. We have demi, we have permanent. Even impermanent, we have 10 volume, 20 volume, 30 volume, 40 volume. We have different strengths of how we mix it in as well too. So yes, we can get access to textile dyes. They're not going to be as strong as what the manufacturer is going to have, but it is a valid way of refreshing, and that's the thing, what it brings us to when we color hair. This is why we recommend, when we're using professional hair color grade color in a salon, we only recommend to tone within the same level or deposit to go darker than what you're starting with. It's the reason why we do not recommend to try to lighten or bleach out a hair extension, because even though we are using professional grade products, they're still not strong enough to break through a textile dye that the manufacturer uses. Perfect visual example is our clothes. If you've ever been doing a highlight on it turns orange or some weird yellow, and you try to sit it and touch it up with a Sharpie, it don't work. It turns into some freaking mud brown, ugly thing. And then as soon as you go to wash it, it comes right out anyways. And then you got that weird spot again, It's just a classic example of showing visually how it is just not strong enough to penetrate that dye load. Again, I reiterate, you should only ever try to tone within the same level or deposit darker. I don't care if a social media video showed you that one time one stylist was able to do it, that is after 100 failures, and myself included. I've gotten hair to lighten a number of times, but that is on the backdrop of failing 1,000 times, So my 100 successes cost me 900 failures.
Right.
And that's just how it goes. So that is the reason why we have a variety of shades of colors. And just like Bernard was mentioning, it's the reason why we have those B series in there. It's why we have the NC, the non-chemical, It's the reason why we have from light to dark and dark to light and everything in between. So that's everything we can tell you about hair color.
One more thing I want to mention. I got Bridget here.
Oh, hi,
Say
Bridget.
Hi, Bridget.
Good morning.
She's not speaking this morning.
She's camera shy.
Yeah. So my big beef, maybe I need it. I don't know this. I can't get us both in the mirror. She's got big legs over here. So the matching of color drives me crazy. People take that swatch, and they're trying to match the color up here, and they go up like this at the root of the hair. We talked about this on video. Whether you're doing it like this and trying to color, and obviously this is not the right color, But the crazy thing about, it drives me so crazy. I'm going to take a color that's completely wrong, right? God, I got the right color there too. And we go to put this extension in on this client somewhere near the scalp, and the dark hair starts to fall over this. Look, you don't even see the extension till down here somewhere.
Yeah.
Right. That should be enough of an example that you don't see the extensions till it's blending with the ends of some hair. So here's the trouble. People will say, oh, so I've got to match the ends, not the ends at the very end, not the ends of the hair that's coming out low on the head, the top row of extensions. How high would that top row of extensions be? That's what you need to do, is kind of get a guessed idea and part off that section.
Yeah.
And that is where the extensions are going to match. That's what you need to match. So you need to take your color swatch and match in this area. And then there's another little trick you can do. What I do is I fan this out a little bit between your fingers and comb it like this, because you need to get that air in there. I don't know if you can see that. You need to get that air.
You have light pass through it. Yeah.
Yeah. So that way, when you lay it on here close to those ends and you do like this, you see, I got something in there. Even with a color that's completely wrong, when I fan out, put some light in there and comb it in there, it starts to blend better. So you can imagine if I get a color that's close, because you hardly ever get the exact color. And when you have no light in there and it's really bold and you just lay it up there, the biggest problem with the color matching is the way the hair curves. Light shines off the hills and is darker in the valleys, and you create different hills and valleys with this. So you've got to fan it to get it as light as the ends that you're kind of showing. And then when you comb the two together, you're holding them at the same angle. So I like to even make the ends of this disappear under the spine of the comb. So when I put it up here and I comb through, I'll stop when the spine of the comb's on there, and I'm looking through here to see if it blends. Because if it blends like that, that's going to be the right color, and that's where it's going to show. And then we just talked about the ends down here might be a different color, and that's why two wefts, when you're stacking one over the other, the top weft needs to match this top ends, and the bottom weft needs to match these ends, and they might gradually become a different color. Quite often people's hair are different colors, a little lighter going to the ends or a little darker, so much so that we named a bunch of these techniques in the early, we started coming up with names of what it looked like for colors to fade from one color to another. And there's a million names, so I'm not going to go into any of them right now. You all know the fancy color names. And I just learned another one the other day, and I was like, really? Now, what does that mean to you? And it's like, oh, there's 10 other names for that same thing, but I see now you think, so it's just show me a picture, let's match it. And so matching color is another trouble. And so if I go through all that trouble to match it, and then you go home and color your hair to freshen it up before our next appointment, I'm really mad.
It's rough. Because when the contrast, you're creating an additional contrast, and when it doesn't match, it does not match. There is no blending. You're on a color corrective. You basically are doing a color correction.
Right. That's right. So some cutting, some texturizing, some razoring, thinning shears can start to blend it a little bit better when you have the wrong color. But it's really better to have the right color. So now you're going to the client's hair and you're trying to remove some color, highlight it to get it to blend with the extensions. And that's just more time, service, money. Maybe you don't have the time. Go ahead. You just had an aha.
No, when we're just talking about that, look, let this be a PSA. Do not try to do a color stripper, a detoxifier, a mineral rinse, some kind of color removing product. If the color is wrong in the hair extensions, treat it like a classic color correction. Attempt to fix it with a toner first before you try to fix it with a color, a permanent color. And leave.
And when you say toner, I think a lot of people misunderstand this is not a color class, so I don't want to go too deep into it. But I've seen too many people. The classic example is bleaching up to some golden orange, barely orange, a little gold, and they're trying to tone for platinum blonde. And the thing that's not getting through to people's heads, toners don't go lighter, right?
Toners don't go lighter.
They
No,
don't lighten hair.
The purpose of a toner is to correct, balance, fill, tone over the unwanted color.
But you're always adding color in a toner, not taking it away.
100%.
You might slightly do a lateral move by canceling something out and not look like you're going darker. Even going darker, but a different tone can look lighter because it might be a more attractive color, you know. But toners don't go lighter, and that's, if you know your level, you're not going to go from a level 8 or 9 to a 10 or 11 with a toner. You got to bleach it up to that level or lighter before you can tone. And that's the mistake I think a lot of people make with toners. You can only, so what you're saying there, I'm reading a little more into with extensions, is you're saying treat it like corrective color, but start with toner.
Because everybody goes to a color stripper first. And that is
right.
That is not the go-to thing.
You're especially with extensions, because that textile dye does not remove easily, and it does not respond to our hairdresser type of remover, strippers, lighteners. So you need to think about changing the client's hair to match more. And if you are going to change the extension hair, toning, like you said, is going to be the better option. Toning, semi-permanent, even permanent color is going to be a better option, because you can only go darker on most extensions, hair replacement, hair pieces, human hair wigs. Don't try to go lighter. It's just going to be a disaster. Only going darker. And toning is usually the slight bit darker, but you're just trying to take away an unwanted color usually. But I would rather color it black, color the client's hair black, call it good. We can match black.
Blondie? Not anymore.
We're going to be black today. So let's go into, we're going backwards, but I think this is fine. Let's go into texture then.
Oh, we just hit 2.2 million views.
Nuh-uh.
That is cool. That's super cool, man.
That is. Who said this? I'm not on
I just saw the comment come through. That's awesome. Thank you, everybody, for watching. That's freaking cool. That's super cool. Especially because what is this? This is only our second year doing this, or is it our third year now? We haven't been doing this that long, so it's awesome, man. Thank you for watching. I appreciate that.
Million views. So texture can mean so many things. You know, we misuse or misunderstand possibly with texture, because we're going to talk about texture like it's a curl pattern, right? Because when we texturize hair, that's not really the same. We're talking about the ends of the hair, or putting short and long pieces together by putting texture, making it not so blunt, one length, you know, that's going to be different. Oh, there you go. So we got like straight
body, natural body, wavy,
body wave,
or body wave. Yeah. And then curly, deep curly.
And the curly is really curlier than that. I bet if you wet that and scrunch it up, because it's human hair. And so even just sitting in a drawer or something, if it gets underneath something that pushes it flat, it's going to almost be like a roller set, hot roller set, and pushed less curly or more curly, depending on how it's being stored. And I think that is a super important point. Earlier, you said something about nobody has straight hair. And it's a bit hyperbolic, I believe.
You know what I meant, though. Yeah,
I know. But those are the ones that stick out with you forever, because I can remember the one freaking client that says, you said this was straight hair, and I came and got extensions, and I cannot get it to match. I've been working on this for weeks. This is keratin days way back when. I need these extensions out. I can't make it match. I hate it. And it's like the one girl back then it was probably 15 years, but now it's like 35 years. The one girl in 35 years that actually had bone straight hair, wanted straight hair. We called our K-tips straight because we had straight, wavy, and curly. But even the straight hair was not straight, because most Americans, and you know what? I only really do hair in America. So I don't really know, because I know that culturally people have different curls of hair, but culturally in America, most of us have a little wave, right? Some people have curly hair, some people have tight afro curly hair, but rarely does somebody have very straight hair. That's why we flat iron so much, right? So many people are flat iron and smoothing because we don't actually have straight hair, although we call our straight hair straight, which is not straight.
Natural body. That's why we refer to it as natural body, because it appears straight, but it has a ever so slight wave to it. And the thing, what happens is the thing that I harp on all the time. If you do not let your hair air dry, because that's what you're supposed to do ever, especially with hair extensions, it's never a problem. It's only ever a problem 10 out of 10 times, every time we get the phone call. Oh, this hair is not straight enough. It's doing weird stuff. Did you let it air dry? Well, what does that matter? 100% it matters. You know?
Well, you said something that kind of I liked what you said before we got on here, and you said, "Is our hair straight?" Well, it can be. It can be straight or it can be wavy. And Eddie's talking about the exact same hair. Depends on how you blow dry it. I mean, without a whole lot of trying and a whole lot of skill, if I just blow dry hair like this compared to like this, nobody should, I know. But just imagine if I'm just blowing my hair dry and it's
sure. It'd be going like all over the place, right? Yeah, sure.
If I did that and hair just going all over,
you look like a Victoria's Secret commercial.
Or a big sexy booth at a hair show.
Yeah, sure, right, yeah.
And so you know we're advertising for big sexy right now, right? And the hair's going all over the place because we're just trying to draw a crowd, and people are like, "Whoa, that looks like fun," because they never do that in their own salon because it would be stupid. But at a show, it's like we can break all the rules so that we can draw a crowd and then sell our product or whatever. But if you're blowing hair and it's just going up wild and crazy, what do you think that looks like at the end? Let's just say not straight.
Wild and crazy.
Yeah. But if I blow a hair going down, no real hot try-in, not even much of a brush or anything, but just finger combing straight down, and I'm blowing and air is directed into that. It's still going to move around a little. So the next step would be controlling the hair in both directions. I can push it all up with a diffuser and get it dry without blowing it all over, but I'm taking the weight out, because the weight is the water, the products, the whatever I have in the hair, and the hair itself. Pushing the weight out as it dries, the products in there are going to help hold it in that crumbled look, that pushed up against the head look. So then it's going to be, it's almost like when you braid your hair when it's wet, let it dry, take it out of braids, and you've got some curls. Well, similar. That's kind of what a diffuser is doing, right? You're just pushing it into a curl pattern, letting it dry. And if the hair has a little wave in it, which our body wave does, our natural body does, because it's natural body, then body wave. So our natural body has a little bit of wave. So it's not so much that you can't blow dry it straight. Like, it's interesting that these pieces I have on the rack right here are from the same pack, but for some reason at different times, you see one looks like it's got a little bit of curl and one straight.
It's the same hair.
Same pack of hair. One might have got sprayed with a water bottle, and I might have just scrunched it a little or dried naturally, and it got like that. This one, somebody might have passed a flat iron over, or we brushed it a few times while it was drying. Same hair. Now I can go even wavier with this, or I can go even smoother with a flat iron or smoothing iron with that one. So I like what you said earlier. You can be straight or you can be wavy with the same hair.
That's the nice thing about natural body. What natural body won't do is match an S pattern wave. That's the next tier. So you have to be respectful within the confines of what you're working in that texture. Each type of texture matters. There is a tolerance plus or minus, like we were just talking about. But if you have natural body hair extensions and you naturally have an S pattern wave, you actually have a predominant wave in your hair, there is going to be a difference. You are going to have to work harder to get that hair extension to match. So getting the right type of texture to match the right type of curl pattern that you have completely matters. And especially when it comes to the curly hair, your only two choices is either the company makes it already curly texture, or you as a stylist got to perm that hair yourself to match your client's curl.
Or just request at the office for Cindy to tell Eddie to perm the hair for you.
I believe you have just released a whole series on perming. So if anybody's the perm master here, I definitely default.
I love perming hair. It's so easy. I see what we did. We went through this. I can remember somewhere in the early parts of my career, who would have ever thought curly hair was going to die for like 2 decades?
Right.
I didn't see it coming. And when it came, and I think it was like Cher and Madonna within the same few months come walking their stages, red carpets, whatever concert they might have been having at the time, with this parted down the center, so smooth and straight, because it was so different. You know, of course they're cutting edge, completely different. Nobody had seen them with bone straight hair before. Everybody started to copy it, and it stayed around way longer than most trends do. It became timeless. It's not even a trend because it stayed around for so long. Yeah. Every 2 or 3 years, people would say, curly hair's coming back, perm's coming back. And they didn't until recently. I mean, we didn't see curl actually come back till recently. Now, we've always done some curly hair, but it got to the point where we went from doing a perm or 2 a day in the salon to where we were doing a perm or 2 a year in the salon. I mean, literally, we were doing 10, 15 perms a week in a salon because guys were getting the back curled, getting the top curled. Girls were getting a little wave so that their irons and curling irons and whatever other tools they were using, their hair would hold better because they had some more body in their hair than they were born with. And so they wanted more curl. And of course, in the 80s, I became a hairdresser at the very late 80s, but I just come out of the 80s where it wasn't just curl. It was the frizzier and curlier, the better. We didn't even know you could have big hair without being frizzy. We thought frizzy was beautiful, you know, and all those 80 bands, even the guys had big frizzy hair. So to go so flat and smooth for so long really took a piece of my soul away.
It took a piece of your soul away.
I was like, I still love that big, wild hair, and I like it messy. So even my own wife, I married her with big curly hair, and she jumped on the bandwagon, and she came to our salon. I even remember when we first got married, I said, I can make your hair straight, and I tried, and I failed because it was the beginning of us learning how to do it, and I was like, wow, this is not that easy, especially if somebody with as curly hair as yours. And so I tried it a second time. Then we just gave up. A few months later, one of my stylists said, I can do it. And she says, no, you can't. Bernard already tried. And they're like, no, I can do it. And I'm like, she probably can do it. I'm not that good at it. I'm good at making the curls look good. I wasn't good at getting it straight. I became a master at smoothing, and it's because it's a pretty easy skill also, but you had to practice, you know? Mm-hmm. And so now the perms are coming back. I did decide to start sharing some of the tips and tricks and get a little perm series out there. But I would prefer to perm the hair myself rather than order it curly, because I want to choose the curl that I put on it. And maybe you could talk a little bit about how much hair should go on a rod.
Well, that was one of the things we were talking about earlier too. Here's the pros and cons. If you pre-order the curl from the company, it's done for you. It's all ready to go. The flip side to that is that curl going to be too tight, or is it not going to be tight enough to match your client? Everybody's hair is different. So,
and it doesn't have to be perfect. I do find that if you get it within a certain range, they follow each other really well. They'll pull each other together. Like if you get wavy hair that's a little wavier than your own hair, especially in today's styles, most people don't pump up the volume curl up in this area. That's right. The difference of curly hair today compared to curly hair 20 years ago, 30 years ago. We used to try to get it big here and stay big all the way out. Now curly hair stays a little flatter here and then starts to show the curl more down here. So we're still a little flatter up top. So if your wavy extension hair gets a little wavier down here, the client's hair will follow that curl and blend in, especially if you put some cut texture in there to add to the curl texture.
That's the benefit on the flip side of doing it yourself, because now you can control tighter rods at the bottom or looser rods at the top, or whatever combination of you want to do. That's the other thing to keep in mind. You got to figure out where your placement is going. Just because you are perming the hair yourself doesn't mean you have to use the same identical curl perfectly through the entire set of hair extensions. In my recommendation, it's actually better to use 2 sizes, not just use the one same rod size.
I agree.
Get 2 different variations and keep them close together. They don't have to be extreme differences. So like I was talking to Bernard earlier, I was saying I was using grays and whites, and then I used, for another situation, I use pink and blues. So when you choose your rod size, that's the first part of it. Now the next part is deciding how much hair is going to go around that rod. Okay. In a pack of keratin, specifically for the She hair extensions, they come in increment of 10. In the strand version of the onstage hair extensions, they come in increments of 25. That is one pack.
Right.
Just because that much hair comes in a pack, that doesn't mean you wrap one entire pack around one rod.
I had never heard of that until today. Eddie got to help a stylist out recently. Would you say her first and last name? Just kidding. No.
Out of respect, I won't.
I'm just joking. I'm just joking. I was a little blown away when you said that. It never even crossed my mind to put a whole pack of hair around one rod. Talk about save some time, though. Maybe that works when you do 10 strands, but I would never have done that. I was looking at this hair here, if I can get it in front of us, and I got a lot of different colors on here on both sides of this rack, but we had always just taken, I don't know, a little section about, I guess if that were strands, that might be 3 or 4 strands. And then you got to think about when you put the hair on the perm rod, if you just wrap it around the perm rod where it just gets bigger and bigger around itself, you got a tighter curl at the root, at the end, and then looser curl here, because like a snowball going down a hill, it gets bigger and bigger, right? So you should technically be starting, I know this is not a perm rod, but you should be technically starting your wrap on one end of the rod, and as you go up, let the rod hang straight down. You see what I'm doing? I started here, and it stays the same size as I get to the top. And so then the hair is going around the rod from one end to the other. So you're keeping it the same. And that is technically how a spiral perm works, where it's the same size the whole way through, as opposed to, and both work fine. Just whatever way you can get that hair all around the rod, and just do a few sections like that through there. And I'm with you. I almost always like to use 2 different colors, at least 2 or 3. So I'm going to gray and white pretty commonly together, purple and a peach or orange rod if I'm doing bigger, pink and blue if you're going really, really tight.
But you gotta take that into consideration. The other thing you got to factor in is, like you were saying, Bernard, the size of the rod matters, because if you have a smaller rod, you can only get 2 or 3 strands on there, because by the time it wraps around so many times, it's going to bunch up. It's not going to allow the perm solution, nor the neutralizer to evenly disperse and distribute throughout that entire rod. If you have a larger rod, then you could put 3 to 4 strands on there. From personal experience, in my opinion, you should only ever have 3 or 4. You should never have 4 or 5. Like 4 is the limit in my personal experience on a larger rod. On a smaller rod, 2 or 3. Even 3, depending on how small you're going, you're starting to push it. Just because, again, it just gets too bulked up on the one rod.
Right.
And if you're doing a weft, look, it's labor intensive. You can't just be like, I'm just going to take a whole chunk and pinch it into the middle. Then the top, you're going to have like this weird straightness on the top, and you're going to have this beautiful curls going through the rest of it. You gotta match up the size of your rod, and the hair can only be in the center of your rod. You can't, just because your rod is this big doesn't mean you could take the section perfectly exactly that wide. The section that you take should be slightly smaller.
and maybe RJ can put some links to the perm series I had done, because I don't want to go into great detail here, but there's a lot of importance to how wet the hair is before you put the solution on. Because if your hair is too wet when you put the solution in, well, all you're doing is watering down your solution. You know, you're going less potent, so it's not gonna do as much to the hair as it could do if you got it too watered down. And then, of course, drying it so that the right way with paper towels over a regular towel. The blotting's important. The timing's important. Some parts of the timing don't matter as much. You know, how long each chemical's on the hair does matter, but then how long between the chemicals does not matter. And so some people think they got to rush between waving lotion and neutralizer, when actually you stop rushing. After you've got the timed waving lotion done, you rinse it really well. You can blot for an hour or two, get it as dry as you can with a paper towel, lots of paper towels before you neutralize. As a matter of fact, you don't have to neutralize at all. You can leave the rods on there, let it air neutralize, and just dry on the head. I say on the head, on the rack, the mannequin head, whatever you're doing it on, for 4 or 5 days. If you've got that kind of time, that's going to be a healthier, tighter, more true to rod size. And so what I'll do is I'll often do a shorter double check system. I'll do a neutralizer, just a few minutes, and then rinse it really good, just to make sure I got a little bit of chemical neutralizing going on, and then still let it air dry on the rods for 3 to 5 days or whatever I have. If I can do a whole week, I do. And people are looking at it like, you sure we shouldn't rinse it? I was like, if you've rinsed the neutralizer out really well and the waving solution really well, and then we just let it air dry, it's going to be fine. And when you first take the rods out, it's now also like a roller set. So it looks ridiculous right at first. Don't let that scare you, because as soon as you wet it, it softens up a little bit, because now it's a roller set and it's really, really true to rod size. And that's not going to happen after you wet it, but it does help hold the curl in much, much longer if you let it dry in that position. That's part of why perms fall out of curl. You let them out too soon. So that's just a couple of the details that I cover in that perm series. I think it's a good one to go into. Anything more about texture before we move into?
No, length is what we got left now.
Length. Let's talk.
And length doesn't mean 22 freaking inches. Okay. Length means anywhere from 10 to 22 and everything in between. 14, 18, okay, 16, 20. Do you guys have that 28-inch hair? And the 26 to 28-inch hair? Yes.
But we do have longer hair in she hair, but not in onstage hair. But some people want 30 inches or longer. And I was a little embarrassed at first, because on onstage hair, there's 2 different manufacturers, right? Onstage hair, longest we have is 22-inch. And that particular manufacturer does not believe in getting hair longer than that. They don't think that you can get the quality worth it. Like when you go in longer and longer and longer, you got to think it's been on a person's head longer. Now it takes more chemical processing. So the fact that it's a commodity, it costs more, but it doesn't just cost a little more because it's a little longer. It costs a lot more because it's more rare and it's harder to process. So by the time you have processed, it's already going to be lower quality hair when it gets longer, because it's been around longer, right? And it just regular wear and tear is going to wear it out. So there's just so much going against really long hair. It's hard for us to be able to back that long hair without the amount of complaints coming in.
I'll tell you this way, from a stylist perspective, I'll tell you this way. Okay. I was talking about this yesterday. So I'll ask you, because I asked the same question. You mentioned share earlier. Other than share, there is, in my opinion, if you think of the most beautiful fashion icons in our lifetime and in history, all the women who are considered the most prettiest, the most beautiful women ever, and all the most iconic hairstyles are only collarbone length or shorter. Cher is the only one that I can think of that had longer than collarbone length, that extremely long hair.
And most of the time, those are wigs.
I understand, but if you look at every classic haircut, it's some kind of layered, it's some kind of length, bounce, movement, fullness. And when I say
Layer.
length, I'm saying like shoulder length, not
Yeah.
down, this mermaid hair trend that came through. The whole thing was, you wanted to have hair long enough to be covered up. Like you want to be naked, but you still want to be covered up and you don't want to be exposed.
I
Yeah.
love that you say naked. I say naked also. Most people say naked, but I like naked.
Naked. Naked. I can do it. Yeah. I got to do like that.
Yeah.
If you want to be naked.
It'd be better if you didn't do like
But you
that.
think about this. The average person, the average woman is what? 5'5", 5'4" to 5'6". Okay. If you're that tall, half of that is in your legs, the other half of that is in your torso. If you're doing equal proportions, most females are not equal
Are you
proportions.
trying to talk people into telling them their hair's too long?
Yes, 100%, man.
Doesn't matter what you say.
I
It doesn't
know.
matter what you say.
None of this is going to matter what I'm saying.
I love long, thick hair, unnaturally long and thick also.
But when it's down to your waist, that is so much hair. If you're 5'4", it's so long.
Beautiful. It's so beautiful. I know. I'm glad you agree with me here.
Because you like hair. You don't like the rest of the body. You only like looking at the hair.
That's not true. I like it all. I just love the hair. But I even think 22 is pushing it a little bit. I love thick 18-inch hair. I almost wish we had a 20-inch because I think 22 is a bit too much on most people, and 18 might be a bit short on the ones when you're going overboard and just going out of the way to go long hair. But for hair shows, I almost always do 18-inch because even at 22-inch, we deal with a little bit more quality issues than we will with 18-inch because it's been around a little longer. So it's going to take more chemical processing to get there. So there's always the person had the hair on their head longer before it was donated. So that's going to cause it to be a little older. But with length, I think the thing that we really need to cover with length and get away from our opinions on what we love about length or no length or what
Fair
length.
enough. Technically, yeah.
How about how long is your hair now compared to where you want to be? That is the unrealistic expectation of too many people. They'll have hair here. Too often it's the unrealistic things I get asked. People have shorter hair as me. Maybe it's spiked up a little wilder, crazier looking, and they say, can I get extensions? Well, that's a loaded question. Sure. But they're going to look terrible. Yeah, I can do it. Well, what do you want me to, where do you want them? Do you want a mohawk? Because your hair's long enough up here that I can connect to. Or show me your desired. What do you want to look like when we're done? Do you want hair connected on the sides, and do you want to look long and straight, and you want me to connect hair to this? Like, it's unrealistic. First of all, a lot of people will ask in classes that have never done extensions, how short can somebody's hair be to put extensions on? I said, that is not a question you're going to get that often. You guys ask it because you're nervous about it and you realize it's going to be difficult to do. But the truth is, the person who wants extensions most of the time is the person who usually wears their hair longer, and they got a bad cut. They got a bad idea. They followed a trend. They thought short hair was going to be cute, and it just wasn't on them. And so then they're growing their hair out, and then they get impatient. When it touches the shoulder tells them, you've waited long enough. It's something about the hair just barely getting in this area that it starts to look thinner because all the hairs grow at different rates. And so when it gets here, they see this wisp here, and they've got this choice to make now. Now it's like, my hair looks like shit because it's all scraggly on the ends, but I'm growing it out and I don't want to cut it off. I want long hair again, but they're telling me I need to trim it to make it look good. Or I could get extensions, right? And so this is like the magic length for extensions. It's like just past, the skin, the trap muscles into the collarbone. So it's when hair's in this area, it's actually the easiest to put extensions in, because when hair is above that, you see in this area, you see that bob.
You see through it, yeah.
Yeah, bobs and shorter hair. The shorter a person's hair is, the harder it is to do, the worse it looks if you try to do it, the more expensive because you need to use more hair. So that's our biggest challenge is the bigger the difference in the start and the end of the length. That's the biggest
You got to
problem.
find the shortest length of layer that the client has. And then if you use your styling comb, if you're using a full size styling comb, they're generally 12 inches. Okay. So if you find,
you use a 12-inch comb?
what's that?
You use a 12-inch comb?
If you're using a full size styling comb, it's a 12-inch comb.
Because those little cheap ones you get from the, from the beauty supplies, what, 6 or 7 inches long?
6 or 8.
Okay.
Yeah. And then otherwise, like the barber combs are 6 inches. The shorter styling combs are 8 inches. A full size generally is 10. The largest is 12.
Okay.
So if you get yourself a full size large styling comb, you find from the top of the head, whatever the shortest layer is. And then from the shortest layer, you put the tip of the comb from the one side and you let that comb drop down. That's how long you can make that hair look as natural as possible with an average amount of hair. If you want to go beyond that comb length, you need 1.5, almost double the amount of hair that you were intending to put in to make it look more natural.
And that's probably the thing we didn't talk about here. We're saying length, but we should kind of cover thickness also, because the misnomer is people will say the client already has a lot of hair, so I don't need to add much to add length. I know. And we talked about that in the past because they're just going to add one more layer down low and just put one low weft and add it in. So when you were talking about the hair on top, it reminded me of something I always said. This was kind of my personal rule. I think the start of being easier, making it blend, being able to cut it to blend, just a start. It's not ideal, but if the hair on the top of a person's head, if you pull it up and you get to the ends of it and it falls to the top of the ear, that is the top layers fall to the top of the ear. These bottom layers might go down in this area.
They might lower.
But if they've got a real bad shag, short shag, I should say, a real short shag where the tops are kind of spiky, it's hard you're not going to make the spikes disappear because you're not putting you can put extensions in that area, but even if you put extensions right here and it's long, that spiky hair is still going to pop out of the grouping of extension hair that we attach to. So you're still going to see a bit of a spiky, shaggy look. So if the hair on top gets as long as to the top of the ear, what I'm saying is the shorter hair is like mine, sticking up a little bit, right? The longer it gets, the more the weight of the hair itself wants to flop down against the head. So hair on top of the head, if it gets to about the top of the ear, it starts to lay flat enough that I can put extensions in up here and that hair on top will lay flat enough to blend with it. So that's my first rule. If the hair on the top of the head, and I've done it with people with shorter hair, but I do a lot of explaining and I put all the risk on them. I can do it, but you're probably not going to like it. It's going to take a lot of extra hair and it's going to cost you a bunch of money and a whole bunch of extra time. I wouldn't do it, but I will do it and I'll take your money. Do you still want to do it? And they sometimes say yes, and I'll give it a try. Some of them work really hard to make it look good, and they got to do a lot. The only times it's been successful with me was on hairdressers who knew what they were in for, and they're going to do a painstakingly amount of time putting oils and products and smoothing it and flattening it and trying to get it to blend, and it looks okay. But by that point, why not just wear a wig? But with clients doing that, I don't want to do it. But when I'm recommending to a hairdresser across the country who's asking me, how short can somebody's hair be? I would say the top to the top of the ear would be the shortest I would attempt it. And then all the other lengths should be past the shoulders, past the top of the shoulder. And it seems backwards, right? But I thought people with short hair would want extensions. Sometimes, but not most of the time. Not most of the time. Most people, like I said, they get into this area here. A lot of people have hair down to here and want extensions for thickness and a little bit of length, mostly to make their hair look just more, I don't know, just more power, just a look fuller, just to look like they have more hair on their head. So the thing about length is that when a client has any blunt ends, you really should be texturizing those ends and all the layered ends before applying the extensions so that the hair kind of feather edges into the extension hair. And then again, you should be razoring or texture cutting some of the extension hair to blend in better there. That's hard to do with words, us explaining it, but I wanted to at least cover it because I think some people will understand just from explaining it.
100%. So that covers everything there we were talking about today about choosing the right type of hair extensions.
1 hour and 2 seconds.
It's beautiful, right on the money. Texture, length, and color. There you go. Thank you once again for over 2.2 million views. That is an amazing milestone. We really, really appreciate it. Give us a comment. Let us know what other questions you have, what your choice of length, texture, or color is. And we'll catch you all next week. Thank you again, all you profitable stylists and all you future profitable stylists out there.